All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Locke. I'm the IBPA Director of Membership and Member Services, and we're doing this series called the Get to Know Your IBPA Member Benefits series because we want to give an in-depth look at all of our amazing member benefits. Today is a really cool one. We're covering the DropCap International Rights Sales Program, and we are very grateful to have DropCap CSO and co-founder Allison Olson and VP of Business Development Monica Nguyen. Welcome, Allison and Monica.
Thank you for having us.
Very much. Thank you,
Yeah.
Christopher.
Thank you. I mean, you're like, you all are the like big people over there. So we're grateful to have you. I'm going to open up the slide. So give me 2 seconds. I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get the ball rolling. So, okay. So I'm going to go to slide number 1 and let me know if you see it.
Yes.
We do.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to hide my video and you just tell me whenever you want me to go to the next slide.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to all the IBPA members and everyone else who's joining us today. Quick background on Monica and I. I have been in we both have been in publishing for about 30 years. Since we were teenagers, right, Monica?
Exactly. Yeah. Just
so
kidding.
I lived in Spain for a few years. So my first job in publishing was to help a publisher start a Spanish language line. And then from there, I worked for Llewellyn, they're a mind, body, spirit company. And then I started my own boutique agency called Letter Soup, and I did that for about 15 years. And then I ran into Mark Levine, who is another DropCap co-founder, and he had recently sold his self-publishing company, Hillcrest. And we were lamenting about how tech has kind of left publishing behind, and certainly in the rights field, in the translation rights field. And so he and I and he had a really innovative tech platform from his old company. So he brought in his tech guru, Mark Trainer, and then his COO, Lindsay Jones, and the four of us founded DropCap. And that was in about 2018. And then fast forward to now, we have about eight full-time people and lots of contractors. And one of our very first hires was Monica Nguyen. And it's been such a pleasure to work with her for the last 2 years. Monica, can you share a little bit more about your background?
Yes, thanks, Allison. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Christopher, and IBPA members and non-members. Hopefully a few recruits today. Yeah, so similarly to Allison, I started in publishing as a teenager about 25, 30 years ago for Oxford University Press Canada. I'm Canadian, and that was my first entree into the publishing world. And I stayed there and within Canadian publishing for a few years, and a rights opportunity came up. And as soon as I entered the world of rights, I knew that this is where I needed to be. I've always loved personal travel, and I have European parents. And so I just felt that this world really opened up my entire horizon. After my time in Canada, I moved to London for 11 years and worked for various publishers in a rights role, rights director capacity, the latest one being Hay House, who are a big mind, body, spirit publisher. And Christopher, you may know them because their head office is in Southern California in Carlsbad. And following that, I had an opportunity to move to their New York office, got my green card sorted, and during the pandemic, I left Hay House. I was just starting my own small agency when Allison thankfully reached out and said, hi, we just wanted to connect and see through LinkedIn. So I still, to this day, remember that interview so clearly. And long story short, I was hired January 1st, 2021 through Mark, our CEO, and Allison. And to this day, it feels like I've known Allison for many years. And we always joke that we must have met in the ladies' room lineup at one of the Frankfurt book fairs. So, but it's been such a delight. And what also appealed to me was the combination of traditional rights selling and publishing along with this innovative technology, which we'll go into in more detail. But I was in such awe, like just thinking, wow, you can generate a contract so quickly. You can have people have their own dashboards. And I love that they were so cutting edge, and it was something really refreshing and new in publishing. So I'm delighted to be going into my 3rd year at DropCap. So that is a little bit of my background story.
All All right, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so we'll get into a little bit more about DropCap and IBPA and how we're working together. But for the most part, the idea is for us to help smaller presses and individual authors take the leap into the international licensing world. There's just so much opportunity, and foreign publishers are looking for small indie little gems, and so we wanted to make sure we could make that happen, and we needed to use tech to kind of bring that to the masses. So we'll get into a few more details on that as we go through. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So we'll start with kind of the basics. What are translation rights? So basically, that's kind of a new term. A lot of people use foreign rights as well, but basically it's a bundle of rights that a copyright holders own, and then they can sell and monetize. So whether that be an author would own all of their rights, of course, if they self-published, or if you've worked with a traditional publisher or a hybrid, there could be, they might be managing that for you. And then there's many, so just like in English, in your original book or books, plural, you can decide to publish it in hardcover, paperback, ebook, streaming, audio, all the different video, film, all the different options that the content can be delivered. And so that applies in every single market in the world. So you could sell, for example, in French, you could sell to, the hardcover print to one French publisher and the French audio to another. So that's kind of the gist of what translation rights are. Monica, what would you?
Yeah, and we use this book in particular as an example. David Mickey was a Hay House author, in fact, and he came over with me to DropCap. And because his books are so successful, his physical books in other languages, one of his publishers, a French publisher, has decided to generate a card deck, which can be very popular in the book buying world. And they found an illustrator. So basically they're repurposing the product to bring out still his message of, which is instant karma of Buddhism, and to create this, similar message in a different form. And the illustrations are beautiful. David's really excited. Feels very collaborative. And I think that's a perfect example of how, if a book is successful and intriguing and can be presented in a different way, there are endless, well, limited, but somewhat endless possibilities of how you can work your content to appeal to many different audiences. So that's why we use this example. And he's a wonderful author also.
All right, on the next slide is kind of a flow chart of how it works. So obviously nothing happens without authors. We start with the author. Authors may, employ a literary agent if they're seeking to be published by a traditional publisher, or they may self-publish. And in any case, you get to the original English edition. And from there is where we kind of come in. So you might decide to hire a rights agent. And that's what we are. And we are charged with trying to maximize licensing opportunities for you. And then the co-agent piece is in some of the markets, especially in the Asian markets, they utilize co-agents who are agents like us that are on the ground and locally and know all the publishers. And then that way, those publishers, Japanese, Chinese, et cetera, can deal with the co-agent in their native language. And it's our job to help the co-agent pitch the titles to them. And so eventually, whether it be a direct sale from us, the rights agent, to the international publishers, the French publisher, for example, back to the French example, or whether we went through a co-agent, we get to the foreign edition. And by the time we get to this piece, we've already, the rights agent has already negotiated all the terms of the contract with the licensee. We've handled all the payments. There's typically an advance against royalties. Contracts are typically 5 years. We negotiate the territories, and then we start giving or collecting all the revenue. So it starts with the advance, of course. You hope it earns out, and then they start paying royalties throughout the term of their license.
Yeah, and then with co-agents, at one point they were called sub-agents, and now they're referred to as co-agents. They also kind of are very much a part of the vetting process. So a key example is in Korea, most or many publishers don't speak English or don't feel comfortable speaking English. They will go through the co-agent, and that co-agent has already vetted those publishers. They know all about them, how successful they are, what they've published, and almost like acting like a barrier between, or a liaison between the originating publisher and their publisher clients. So in Korea, we have 10 or 12 non-exclusive agents that we work with, whereas Allison in China works with primarily just one. So it depends on the market, but we have also a high level of trust with those agents. Otherwise, it just wouldn't work. And we find that it's a great way to just protect ourselves, protect the author, and yeah, and it's a very cohesive arrangement all around.
Okay, on the next slide, is kind of what to expect from rights sales. So one of the things is backlist is king in rights selling. It's new in that market. So even if your US edition is a few years old, by the time it gets into Chinese, it's brand new to that market. So a strong backlist title does have legs internationally. So I think that's exciting, and kind of most people don't know that. They think, oh, my book's already too old to start marketing it internationally, and that's just not the case. We kind of say they have 9 lives because many of our licenses are the original term is 5 years, and then if they're selling well, they renew. So now you're looking at a 10-year license. And then there's different, there's foreign audio that's really growing quite a bit. So you can expect to see queries for your foreign audio licensing. Oftentimes, if a foreign publisher does really well with one of your titles, especially by the same author, they're going to want the second book. And so there's a loyalty that builds up. And, as the licensees in a certain country start familiarizing themselves with a certain publisher, for example, Familius, one of our publishers, they know that when they buy a Familius title, they know what the quality is. So they can expect a certain sell-through. So there's a loyalty that starts to build up over time, which is kind of, most people don't know about. Networks are key. So one example is we have one of our publishing clients had been exhibiting at the Frankfurt Book Fair for many years, and doing a great job with their export business, but just hadn't had much in the way of licensing. And we took them over, so they had their booth and we had their books in our booth, and we were able to secure a 66 title deal for them right away the first time we exhibited. So that's just the difference we just knew a different set of people, of licensees that were interested in their titles. And lastly, it's not just traditional publishers. We do a lot of domestic licensing. And one example was a big box retailer in the US, the biggest, licensed just a small piece of one of our business books. And then they rolled it out as a training materials to their 5,000 merchandisers at their company. And so that was quite lucrative for that author. So those are a few examples. Did I miss any, Monica?
Yeah, and one other example that just came to mind earlier today about the longer life cycle. I've made a new friend recently. She is a judge, and every time I see her, usually at a dinner party, she's like, so what do you do again in publishing? I try to explain. It's not a good sign that she doesn't grasp it each time, because maybe I'm not explaining it very well, but it just proves that rights can be very involved and complex. But then the next time I saw her, she said, oh, I'm reading this great book. It's by an Italian-Cuban author, a fiction book, and it was published in the 1950s in Italy, and it's just been published now in English language where she bought it. And I'm like, okay, that's an example of what we do. So I think that registered, and now she's finally, oh, okay, so books can really take that long in translation, or that's how you change a language book into English, or vice versa. So just our point is that you can have a book that's 10 years old, 15 years old, and it has longevity around the world for a lifetime. So
Great. And what, on the next slide, what are the international editors looking for? Of course, we said earlier, backlist is king, but they also want bestsellers, shockingly. And they want internationally applicable titles that can't be too US centric. So can't be on US law or US history. I mean, well, it could be US history, but US healthcare or something that just doesn't really resonate. Strong backlist, of course, and any famous authors, as we all know, Harry Potter is probably translated into every language in the world. So she's very famous, but even just, people with influencers, authors who are influencers or have strong social media. Of course, any awards, endorsements, those type of things really help us to license books internationally. That's what, a lot of our, the international editors are getting very savvy with scouring, social media for authors like TikTok and Book Talk, and also Amazon. So they're looking at who are the Amazon bestsellers, and then often they're contacting those authors directly. And so we help with all of that too. Yeah,
and that's something that's come up, I would say, Alison, in the last 10 years, do you think?
Mhm.
Because before, a self-published author wouldn't necessarily been looked at twice, but now, again, the savvy editors are realizing that you can be a huge success in a self-published way, and are maybe not even looking for bestsellers, but who's kind of coming up in the ranks, who maybe started with 50 reviews and now they're at 200. And obviously the number of stars is very important too, and they might look through Goodreads as well and other sources. So the more that you can promote your book, be it fiction or nonfiction, in a major way, with your own website and your own media efforts, that will get recognized. That won't go, your efforts will be rewarded ultimately.
Speaking of indie success stories, on the next slide is a recent one. So Joseph Nguyen is just a young, brand new self-published author, and he was having some success. So he had self-published. He'd sold about 60,000 copies of his book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And he Googled foreign rights agent, and we connected. And we were able to, in the first 3 months of representing him from October through the end of the year, we were able to sell it in 27 languages. And a lot of that had to do with his great domestic sales. He had become an Amazon bestseller in many categories. He had a strong social media presence. And his message resonated. And so now we're up to 34 languages and counting. You can see the Spanish cover and the Hindi cover here. And this is an example. I mean, he's a little bit of an outlier. We don't always get 34 languages in a few months, but it's an example of how a message can really resonate internationally.
Yeah, and we always sort of joke about managing expectations. So hopefully those listening don't think, oh, great, why didn't I get 34 languages? I mean, a first-time author getting 4 languages is a big deal. So this is really, as Alison said, an outlier, but an incredible story. And I think the fact also that he tells a story, so whether it's fiction or nonfiction, relating to your audience, without thinking, who are my audience, but really exposing personal side of you, giving yourself a true voice and an identity, I think helps a lot. He started out sort of down and out. He was 20,000 in debt, sort of a young graduate. And people, especially young people reading this book, relate to that and are intrigued as to how he changed his way of thinking. And so I think personalizing whatever you're writing about is always appealing. And I think that was part of his appeal to a greater audience worldwide.
Yes.
And some of the obscure places, that's what makes Alison and I, we love that part of publishing too. North Macedonia or
Mongolia.
Uzbekistan. I didn't know that they might have. So it's really great to see all these different languages, not just the mainstream ones that we work with more frequently.
Yeah. All right. How to vet international publishers. So this is a common question, is how do you trust who you're working with? And that's really, for us, we've worked with these people for decades, these publishers internationally, many of them. And for the but we also have many new partners, and we don't know if they're good. So then we have to do what everyone should be doing, which is, request references, vet their, vet what they have told you, go scan their website and check out what other titles they're publishing. What does the quality look like? Check out the reviews of that press. So at the end of the day, Monica and I always try to make sure who we're placing. We know this book is somebody's baby, and we want to, everybody is working hard to make sure that we find the best home for it.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, everybody's suspicious. Oh, it came from a personal email address or a Hotmail address, or I'm dating myself here. But we also feel that everything is worth investigating, because that Hotmail address could just be from a publisher who's a one-man show or one-woman show, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not legit. So I think we take that time to explore. Sometimes it is bogus, but a lot of the times it's, they're just in a small market and they're really keen on the title, and it's a great opportunity. So I think conversely, you have to be careful not to dismiss anyone as well until you've done a thorough investigation.
Great. And so another technique of how we make licenses happen is attend international book fairs. So I would invite anyone interested in licensing to certainly attend at least one. And if you have to choose which one, it would probably be Frankfurt, which is the largest one in the world. I think Monica, I think that's like 60,000 professionals. So B2B folks come each year, and
over 5 days, 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. And London and Bologna are also very big. We go to all of those and exhibit at them. Kind of one thing that stands us apart a little bit is we like to have a booth at these places. And the reason is because number one, our buyers, our editors, international editors, can come to our booth and touch and feel these books, and they don't get to very often. Most of the time they're reading PDFs on their computer. And so this is the chance for them to really see the quality, and we're proud of our books, and we're happy for them to be able to touch and feel them. And the other main reason for having a booth is the walk-ins. So that's how, going back to vetting publishers, well, we try to meet them in person at least once. And so we get a feel for them. Obviously, as we all know, we're all kind of tired of Zooms and things like that. But we were using our technology, we were able to continue to do virtual booths as well.
Yeah, and I think some agents, there's also rights center, they're called rights centers, where just agents have, depending on how big the agency is, one or several tables, and they might have a pile of catalogs or a few key books under their desk, sort of thing. So we are at an advantage that we can, as you can see in the photo, we have imprints of all the different publisher clients we represent. If they would like to send their books there for a modest fee, then we would just, it's a much, and we've had a lot of walk-ins where people just see something that they were focused on and then go one shelf over and may discover something else. So I think that's a benefit that we can offer our clients, which is quite unique.
Yeah. So onto our platform. So we nickname our platform Sherlock because it's like, it really is a platform that matches up by every person, every buyer has their own personalized dashboard within our platform that has all of the book's goodies. So it has, the cover, all the author bio, author photo, where the rights sold are, of course, any awards, everything about the book is in there. And the buyer is in there categorized by their genres of interest and of course, their language and their territory. And then there's a rights ranking, an algorithm behind the scenes that populates their dashboard based on what the top ranking books are. They're going to populate first in the subjects that they're interested in, and then they can click on the book. It expands, and then they can download the PDF right there. They can see if it's available in their language. And it's just a really useful platform that evades the traditional way of selling rights, which is they find a book somewhere on the internet. they have to find out who the copyright owner is, send them an email, wait for them to reply. So we kind of try to cut all that out and give it to them all in one spot. It's constantly changing. We're always adding new titles, and so those populate. There's different categories, whether it be trending, newest, recently licensed. So one thing that a lot of people like, for example, if they're in Western Europe, and they see it sold in Italian, then a French, Spanish, Portuguese, those regions could be more interested in the title. Same with Asia.
Yeah, and we're also very transparent. If we do license a book, everything happens in real time. So the name of the buyer will come up, whether a co-agent was used, and also that might pique interest in neighboring territories. Oh, this publisher has a really prestigious reputation, so this must be a book of note if they were interested, and that sort of thing. And also, if your book has recently won an award, or you see a typo, or everything is in real time, can be changed instantly. So the material is never static, whereas traditionally, if you had a PDF, it would take somebody, maybe a few days to change it or adjust it. So this is such an amazing system for people to get accurate information to the minute.
Yeah, and I'll add that this picture here is actually a virtual book fair booth. So what we do when we talked about, times of COVID, we all had to innovate, and we're still using it because not everybody has returned to the international book fairs, and some people just might never want to travel, don't have the budget for it, or what have you. So what we're able to do is create virtual book fairs. So this one is Guadalajara in Mexico. It's the biggest Spanish language book fair in the world. And we were able to create a booth that the public could see. Everyone can see it, but they can't download a PDF unless they're a current buyer. But it's another sales tool. It's like, instead of having a rights catalog, or a catalog like most publishers have, we use these virtual booths, and we can make them in a few minutes. And we can do them on any category. We can do all adult titles, we can do all kids, we can do fiction. So we're able to do that for people, make different ways of selling, I guess, like the old catalog way.
Yeah. And the PDFs are always watermarked, so we've never had an issue with piracy, and they're always very well protected. And we trust our fellow publishers around the world. So that's not an issue that anyone needs to be concerned with either.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to the IBPA DropCap Indie program. So, I've worked with Terry Nathan since the beginning of my career. So we've known each other a long time, and we see each other at Frankfurt all the time. We just always talked about how really wanted to bring, rights selling to the small to mid-sized publishers and self-published authors. And so we created this program where if you control the rights to your titles, you can join us. And what we do is we'll actively match our buyers with your titles and handle the licensing process from A to Z. So from the promotion to the negotiating of the terms, which you've already previously pre-approved for us, some minimums and things like that. And then we create sell sheets for all of your titles. And you also have your own personalized dashboard. So all the publisher clients or authors, if you're an author, would have your own dashboard that you can access 24/7 to see who is viewing which titles where. So you could see, oh, there's 5 Korean publishers looking at my book right now, or it's trending in this market, but not in this. What can I do about that? So that's kind of the gist of the tech part of the program.
And also, following book fairs, we give each of our publisher clients or authors a full report of the interest they received based on the information we can pull from Sherlock, the attention their book received during the fair, and summarize how the fair went overall, give a few statistics. So it's a really nice follow-up to these fairs. You don't feel that just your book's gone into the abyss, but you're sort of get to see where the attention was, and that's always publishers always find that really appealing, for sure.
Yes. Okay, and then on the pricing, So there's non-member pricing and IBPA member pricing. So you can see kind of the layout here based on the number of books you want to enter into our program. And this is just a one-time setup fee. Then we'll get it into Sherlock and start pitching it. So there is a minimum sales threshold as well to be directly placed into Sherlock, which is 60 copies sold in a 3-month period. And we just kind of want to verify that the book is selling well here. And so we can, have confidence to go ahead and start pitching it to our buyers. Also, Monica and I look at each one, and if we see one that maybe the sales aren't there, but we can think of someone in one of our markets that we think would be interested, then we would go ahead and pull it over as well. And then all the other titles, let's say there's some titles that don't quite meet those sales, they would go into our partner platform called Translation Rights. And all of the DropCap titles are in there. It's the same kind of layout that you saw on the previous slide, very similar. And it's an open platform where anyone in the public can go and browse and look, and it has all the same things, except it does not have the PDF. So we would never put a PDF of your book in a public sphere where someone could download it. It just has the info, and then then they'd have to contact us, and then we would vet them and start that process of licensing. All right, and then so on to content marketing. So what do we do when we're not at international book fairs or reading our dozens and dozens of new emails every day, right, Monica?
Right. Yes. Dozens is an understatement. Yes.
Yeah, sometimes 100. Yeah. But what we are doing, or Sherlock is doing for us, is doing a lot of drip email campaigns. So Sherlock, because it records everyone clicking on each title. So let's say someone in Spain clicked on a book and then never sent Monica and I an email about their interest or whatever. Sherlock will send them an email in like 2 weeks, or there's some categories. Hey, we noticed you clicked on this book. Are you interested? And so Sherlock helps us in that manner. Then in addition, we have a content marketing team of 3 real life humans. They aren't Sherlocks, who do wonderful things for us in LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the main social media. And then we write some monthly newsletter that gets a really good open rate. I think, Monica, it's like 35%.
Yeah.
Open rate. And that's targeted to up to, I think we're about 2,700 international editors. So we're getting good traction. We're really happy with, the follow through, or the open rate, I guess, of the products that the way we're marketing.
And we realize that people are inundated. So through our market research, we make sure to not give information overload, but not disappear too much. So it's always a work in progress, but I think we've reached the right balance where, we've never received an email saying, please stop sending these, or, and people are very responsive. And if they decide they don't want a title, they often will write to us and say no. And it's a great way to consider what they might like instead. It's sort of a starting point of, they weren't interested in this business book, but here's another one they might like. So it has a lot of advantages. And very active campaigns. We have meetings once a week to discuss how we're going to introduce new clients and new featured titles of the week. And we also separate children's buyers from adult buyers, because again, in it being inundated, we don't want people to think, well, I'm not a children's buyer, so why am I getting these children's books? So it's also about the end reader and to be mindful of their time and as well.
Yeah, and I think the whole package of using Sherlock, the tech platform, and then our marketing team's input to create this is that we can really be very nimble. So we get a lot of queries of new books, and maybe there's a really timely book that we want to get this out, or they more so they got some sort of social media or award recently, and we want to talk about it right now. So we can push that out across all of our platforms. And then people see that in a very timely manner. So I think that people really like that.
Yeah, and the feature titles we've recently sent whichever titles we're featuring, we'll send that information to our publisher client, and they're always so pleased and think it's, you know, a great effort that we're reaching out with their books, and makes people feel that, you know, they're being heard and listened to.
All right, so in conclusion, and then we can get to all of your questions. I guess whether you work with someone like us or you're going out on your own, there's a couple, like maybe some checklists that you could put down. And I guess some things would be, you know, select, if you're, for example, if you're a small publisher, go through your list and select titles that you think would travel internationally. Make sure that you're, you know, those are your most promoted domestically. Then you would want to research whether you want to have your own rights person, maybe hire someone and start a department at your publishing house. Obviously, an author probably wouldn't do that, or hire an agent. That's another thing. And then consider, you know, attending an international book fair. That would really give you a good feel, and you would be able to attend more kind of webinars like this that would be live at the site. And learn and meet people, I guess. Keep your expectations realistically about international licensing. It's really don't quit your day job kind of thing. But if you're patient, it's, you know, can be a long game, but it's almost like a domino thing. So like we said, if you sell, if you license a book in China, for example, then it's likely that a publisher in Taiwan might be interested, and then it kind of dominoes. You could get that whole region. But it is a bit of a long game. So and it does take time to, you know, invest in building those relationships, finding the right publishers, vetting them, and then going forward. And I guess for us, for Monica and I, we just love, especially like a first-time author, like the Joseph Nguyen example, just their face light up when they see that first international cover. So yeah, I think that's...
and along the lines of don't quit your day job. You know, it doesn't really get lucrative unless you've sold millions of copies, but rights can also be an amazing calling card for other things. It can help, I mean, to be able to say, oh, I've sold rights in Germany and Spain, that people really take notice and think, wow, that's such a cool, you know, that's so cool. So otherwise, yeah, I think, or it can help you with speaker engagements or promoting your book in other ways. So I think it's just, it's not just about, oh, great, I earned in advance of X amount. It's also how I have a bit of worldwide recognition and feeling part of this global community.
Great. Christopher, should we open it up to questions?
All right. Well, that was really fascinating and also illuminating. I think it's a subject that a lot of people want to get into, but they don't quite know like how it works. So I actually really love how you all kind of help hold people's hand through the process. So that's really appealing. Okay. We have a few questions here. I want to get to them. So someone said, they noticed that the cover art for the foreign edition, not just the title, is different. Is it necessary to have a new cover design from scratch rather than just translating the title?
Want to take that one, Monica?
Sure. So every editor or publisher in every country will know how their book should best be marketed and what kind of culturally, what images may appeal. They might absolutely love the exact cover that the publisher, the originating publisher, has used, or they might think, no, this won't work in our market, so we'd like to do something different. If the publisher or the author requests, which is quite rare, requests to have approval, then we will obviously honor that. But often approval is not necessary because they will trust the process and know that, oh, a Japanese publisher, and also, you know, want different faces, different images to relate to their market. So we trust the process, and our author and publisher clients do as well. But sometimes it's the exact cover and just changing the title. Also, sometimes they would like to, you know, the title might be lost in translation. If it's sort of an ironic title or it's wordplay, then they'll obviously change the title as well to suit their market.
And I'll add to that, you know, these, for example, the Japanese publisher, they decided they liked this book more than finding it from a similar topic from a local author. And so they're investing more. It costs them much more to license a title than to get it locally, because then it would obviously already be in Japanese. So they have to pay for the translation. They have to come up with the cover, and they're really wanting, they're like us, they're paid on, they need to make money off the book. So they're going to put their best foot forward to make the best cover they possibly can. So I think that's part of the trust, is that we know that they're financially, it behooves them to create the best cover. So we know that they're doing the research to know what cover should be done for their market.
And it's also, if there's several books in translation, it's so fun to see the various covers and how they've interpreted a topic. And I mean, to see that on social media, 5 or 6 different international covers juxtaposed is fantastic.
Sure. Can you all go into a little more detail about that 60 copies sold? So what do you mean by that? Is it across different platforms, and how do you like prove that to all?
Yeah. We're kind of doing, well, we have our tech can go search and do a scan of kind of what things are selling out there. It's like BookScan, but it's slightly different. Through Booktelligence, we're tracking that. And we also just would ask the publishers or the authors to tell us what their sales are, what they see. That's just kind of a barometer so that we can make sure it's a book that we should be presenting to our international buyers, because of course they have trust in us that we're presenting the best books we possibly can on a subject. And so it's just kind of what's the word, like a benchmark for us to understand how the book is doing here, so we can better sell it internationally.
And is it across all formats? So let's say ebook, audiobook, print, like.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then someone was also asking about the fees. So you've got that setup fee, like let's say like the $2.99 one.
Yep.
So how does it work? Like they have to pay you some other amount of money later on, or what are there other fees later on?
No, so that's a one-time setup fee, and that's to get it going in the system. And then our commission is 20%, and that is split with IBPA, so it's through that program. And then that's it. The only other fees that would ever come up would be if you choose to send books to an international book fair or participate in any of our book fairs. There's separate fees for that, but those are all by choice. And so it's just, so then as we would go about licensing your titles, the only thing that would come off of that is the commission. Does that answer the question?
So if in 6 months a publisher has 20 more books they want to give us, they don't have to pay that fee again. It's just a one-off, just for our own cost, covering our initial costs, and then there are no other fees included or involved.
And the book stays in your system, what, in perpetuity, or like?
Yeah, and so we just, yes, yeah. I think, I'm not sure if it's a year or two, the initial exclusivity contract. We can look that up and make sure we provide that. But we want everyone to be happy. So they put it in the program, see if we need some time to be able to try to sell it. But if at some point they decide to go another way, they certainly can.
Yeah, and some people are wondering then about the translation. So is that normally the publisher in the other country who covers that, or how does that work? Absolutely,
100%. So I often refer to licensing as kind of gravy money, because you don't have a warehouse full of books that you have to worry about. It's somebody else's problem, including the translation. So no, there are no other fees. If a French publisher decides to buy it, all you do is get money, because you get an advance on the money and on the sale of the future copies of the French edition, and then they start paying royalties. So there's never any other cost to an author or a publisher to have a French edition of their book.
And then also sort of industry standard is we often ask for a file fee. So especially if it's a fully illustrated, for example, children's book, we'll ask for an X amount based on what the industry is kind of asking at the time, and that will cover us providing those file fees, and the author or publisher obviously gets their cut from that as well.
Okay. And I think some people are looking then for clarification on, like, with the 60 copies versus then if you don't have 60 and it goes into that other place, maybe you can just kind of clarify that concept in terms of whether or not you like accept books. Like let's say people pay the $2.99, like you're not going to be like, nope, like you were going to give the $2.99 back, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, because we still feel that the translationrights.com, anyone can go look at that, is another very useful tool. People are seeing it has good SEO, and we promote that. We do special promotions to our buyers for them to look and to find the little gems that are there too. And Monica and I are also looking through that all the time, trying to find little gems ourselves, especially when we can't find what we're looking for in Sherlock. Because we get a lot of people that ask us, hey, I need a book on parenting, autistic children or something very specific. So then we're going and looking for that. So no one's turned away. We feel that any book has a shot, but we just want to make sure that the ones that go into Sherlock have some sort of traction here, so that we can confidently tell our buyers, yes, this one is doing well here.
And sometimes it allows for unexpected surprises. I mean, if there's a book on farming in Idaho, that's probably not going to sell in Korea. But I've once sold a book on a US senator, which to me seemed quite obscure, to a Korean publisher. And who knows, maybe they have a public policy program or they're an academic publisher. So it's another opportunity for a book to get international visibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some people are wondering, like, let's say they're like a publicist or somebody who works with authors, like would they get like let's say like again the $2.99 thing, and then would they set up like an account for their authors, or like how does that work if you're not the author but you're working on behalf of an author?
So whoever can, a publicist could definitely set it up, as long as the author has given that publicist the permission to represent the international rights for the title. Mm-hmm. So we do need whomever is the holder of the rights to be involved. But certainly the publicist could set it all up and just make sure they have permission to go ahead and allow us to try to find some licenses for them.
And would they have almost like that publicist might act almost like their manager or their admin person, represent on behalf of their publisher.
We do have we have some literary agents in our program, and one coming in now through IBPA who did just that.
Okay, and they would have their like one account for all of their authors, or it would be like kind of separate, or
no, he got one account. I think he ended up going to the second tier, the 10 to 49, because he was like, well, I got permission from all these different authors I represent to do this, so I'm going to go for more of them, more of the titles he thought had international appeal.
And then what about new releases? So we've been talking about like, oh, you need to prove like 60 book sales, but like what about something that hasn't been published yet?
That would be, we would just look at it and let you know. We would let the person know, yes, we will take all of these. We're quite, we do know which books, or at least I think we do know what books should have international appeal, and new titles. Just because they're new, they're going to have appeal. But what would be great to know is, what is the marketing plan for them? What is the author planning to do? What is their social media? Do they have a forward? Like just different things like that would be helpful to know.
Yeah. Does the author have a platform? Are they very engaged in their subject matter? Maybe they're, professionals, and the book is kind of their calling card. So there are a lot of factors that we can take into account to make that decision.
And what about then the like genres? So some people were wondering, like children's books, nonfiction, romance, like are there is it fiction versus nonfiction, or like are there things that just don't do as well? Like I guess they want to understand, like, should they even try if they have something that's like obscure that, or if they have a romance and that might do really well.
You want to take that one, Monica?
Sure. It's a big question, but it's tricky. Well, I guess for fiction, an editor will have to read it from front to back. It's, nonfiction, they could have a cursory glance and get a sense of it and then delve in a bit more, but they might say, oh, we really want a topic about mindfulness or something. But for fiction, it takes a bit longer, and therefore it's much more competitive. So I think a really strong cover and obviously a strong story and excellent writing is what's going to break through in fiction. And fiction equally is subjective. Somebody might think, oh, this is a beautiful story and I love how it's written. Others may feel differently. But I think we have some key categories, I would say, right, Allison, that we do well in: business, anything in the self-help, mindfulness, health world.
Pretty much all nonfiction, we're quite strong.
Yeah, I think most nonfiction and children's books, whether it's illustrated picture books, so fiction, or nonfiction, or character development on behavioral issues, that sort of thing. So
we have quite a few partnerships with different governments in China and in Indonesia and Malaysia and different places where we sell a lot of our educational children's books, and they'll buy 100 titles at once. So that's a quite lucrative way to roll those out. And we also do quite well with teacher resources. So we have quite a handful of publishers where we sell those. So that seems like such a niche thing, maybe too American, but actually it's not. Teacher techniques our educational techniques for teachers is very broad.
Yeah, for gifted children or autistic children.
Autistic, just different niche things that, it's interesting because a lot of things we do trend to in the US, we do get ahead of a lot of the trends. And I remember pitching some free spirit books about autism to some, I think it was Arabic language publishers. And they're like, no, we don't have any autistic kids here. No. And then I'm like, oh, really? Okay. And then, a couple of years later, they'd be at the table. Can you show me some autistic books to help autistic kids? So there's part of, sometimes it's just not in the genre is not popular yet in that country. But
yeah, and I don't think authors should follow trends. I think whatever they're writing about, they should just be really authentic and really excited about what they are writing about, and be, ideally experts in that field if it's nonfiction, and the rest will hopefully come. So it's never, I think, a good plan to just oh, what's popular now, I'm going to write about this. And I'm sure most of the authors don't do that anyway, but just something to bear in mind.
Yeah, so some people are wondering in terms of return on investment, which I'm sure you get a lot. It's a big sum of money. Actually, this is very reasonable, by the way, like compared to what could be out there. But anyway, some people are just like, okay, I'm going to put this amount of money down. So they're wondering in terms of, I don't know if you have any stats on, like how many books have sold, or what the, how many different countries you all have been able to sell books into. Maybe if you have any examples of wins, things like that. So that people feel like, I don't know, more comfortable with the concept of like, okay, yep, I can do this. I can afford this.
Yeah. At DropCap, we're doing about 200 to 300 new licenses a year. And as far as, like understanding how much we do have a cheat sheet kind of thing that kind of shows you what is typical advances in each market and also royalty rates. So for example, in Western Europe, it's anywhere from $2,000 advance to $10,000 advances. So you can see how quickly you could earn back your fee in just a couple licenses. And then of course, royalties are on top of that later. In some of the smaller markets like India, some of the smaller markets, it might be $500 advances, $750 advances, but it's a wide range. But this fee, I think, would be covered with just a couple licenses.
Yeah, if the highest membership fee is $1,000, for example, and we usually try to contract nothing less than $750, $500 at the very, very minimum, that can be made up in one or two licenses very quickly. And then continue, in perpetuity if the book continues to sell.
And the majority of our licenses are a couple $1,000 per title, per language. So that it adds up quick.
And some people were asking then specifically about, like they said on the website, it says 80% for the author or publisher is less international taxes and fees. So they're saying, what percentage does that usually take up?
It depends on the market. It depends on the territory. But what would you say, Monica? 10% more?
Yeah, I would say
On the
on
high end?
average.
On the high end?
On the high end, yeah. When I worked at Hay House, I was involved in the royalties, and it's like, no, it's royalty season. That was my biggest nightmare, but because it's very convoluted. But we have an excellent royalty department, and they handle all the deductions and
Very transparent.
yeah, very transparent. And everybody around the world is facing the same issue, whether they're taxed in, differently in every country. It's consistent. So they would find a publisher or author would find the same situation wherever they sell their books, or whoever represents them.
And we do tax forms where we can in each market to reduce the taxes. So, and for example, in Spain, if you don't have this tax form, it's like a 20% tax, but if you have it, it's only 5%. So we make sure to cover all that wherever we can to help make sure that what the author receives is the maximum amount we can possibly get them.
And then in terms of signing up, so let's say someone gets the 1 to 9 title, $2.99 for members, and then they only have, let's say, 2 books right now. So they'll do the 2, but how does it work? Then they have like maybe 2 more books next year, and do they?
Yeah, they could add them. Yeah, definitely. We'll just take them in. It's pretty simple, streamlined process. We have a metadata spreadsheet that you fill out. You add your PDF to it, your cover, all your information, and you would just continue to add new titles to it. And there's a process with one of our colleagues, Aaron, who really handholds people to help them get the products in.
Yeah, it's an excellent checklist. Yeah, the publisher author can make just changes via that checklist, and it's very straightforward. And as Allison said, Aaron is fantastic. So,
and someone else is wondering, how long do you typically take to get the marketing of the book ramped up?
Once all the metadata is in to the program, that includes the cover, everything. If any rights have been sold beforehand, we need to know that. All those kind of the checklist is checked off. Then it's live that same day. And then it starts getting promoted immediately through Sherlock, because Sherlock is going to flag it as a brand new book. So that's going to roll out to everybody interested in that subject right away before Monica and I even have a chance to hand pitch it. So it's very immediate.
And what's the process of the contract? So like, should these publishers have like their own lawyer look at it? Do you all look at it?
We had our contract. We have a contract template that was written by an attorney, our CEO, who is an attorney, and has the input of Monica and I's experience writing thousands of contracts over our careers. So it's a very internationally accepted. We don't get too many edits from our clients because it's quite a standard, simple. It's not too long contract, and we handle it all for them. So and the author or the small publisher, whomever is signing up for the DropCap Indie, you get to see the whole contract ahead of time, and you check off that you saw it, and then that's the contract template we use. So every single clause in there, what the minimum terms are. So DropCap's only allowed to accept terms that fit the minimum that we got your approval for. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. And then people are wondering about the book being sold in English versus let's say someone in France, they buy it and then they sell it the French version, but would they also sell the English language version? Because they would,
yeah.
Only
French. Yeah, and French is a good example. We might only give them French European rights and then sell French Canadian rights to another publisher. Or depending on the size of the publisher, or if they're used to having French world rights, we'll ask for a higher advance. We take different factors into account, but if we can dissect those rights, then it's often more lucrative for the author or the publisher as well.
So per language, so in the same country, they would do different contracts per language. There's multiple languages spoken in the country.
That can happen, but I think what we were talking about was
Oh.
more, we would sell a French edition in Canada to a
Uh-huh.
French Canadian publisher and
Uh-huh.
a French edition to a French publisher.
In Europe.
Separate contracts.
Okay. Because someone was just asking if they're able to sell, the English language version also in whatever other countries. But
Of course. So export of the English edition or print on demand or what have you, whatever anyone is doing in English around the world is just fine. They just continue on with that. One thing I'll add is it's quite lucrative. We have a very established market in India and Malaysia where we work with local publishers there, and they license, just like it's a traditional contract. They license what's called English language reprint, and they will produce the same book, which could be in India being sold through export at a high retail price, because it's going to be the US retail price plus the shipping or what have you to get to India. And then they produce a local one at the prices that the masses can afford. And so those are sold to different markets. And so that can happen too, but that's just very specialized just for those two markets. The rest of the world, English export just continues on, and it has nothing to do with a French edition.
Or we might have an American publisher client and an Australian publisher comes along and says, I would love to license this book for English language, ANZ, Australia, and New Zealand. And if the book is not already in export there so that they're not doubling their efforts, then we can often say, okay, great, we will license that book to Australia. And then they'll publish it under their own publishing company and imprint and use their own marketing channels. So, and that's kind of fun too. You can say, well, it's an American edition, but now it's also in Australia as a license, as opposed to as just an export or distribution deal.
And can I add that when the author or publisher adds their metadata to the spreadsheet that's going to feed into Sherlock and allow us to start representing their title, they can carve out any market they don't want to do. So I don't want to sell in wherever, you can just carve that out, and that's an exception. So that's fine. So if you're open to all of them, you have much more chance of making more money and having more editions.
Yeah, like I refuse to sell my books in Antarctica. Like I'm not going to do it.
It's not going to happen.
Put it in there.
Those penguins, they don't deserve to read my books.
Right.
Okay, some people were asking, is 20% net the max, or is there a cut if a foreign agent is involved on the other side?
The 20% is our cut. So if there is another co-agent, there would be their fee as well.
Okay. Who monitors and follows up with the licensing in the foreign country throughout the term of the agreement, or does the publisher do that?
We do that. We do it all. And it's tedious and a lot of work, but we do all of that.
Yeah, and contractually, our contracts say, after the royalty period ends, they have 3 months to provide their royalty statements, and if they don't, then we have something in place to chase those statements. So the book doesn't just disappear. We're always aware of what's happening, and also through, I believe it's through Sherlock, we can see when a book has come up for renewal. So standard contract might be 5 years, and then close to renewal stage, we personally get in touch with those publishers. Oh, would you be interested in renewing this title for another 5 years?
And then they pay a new advance, and we do a lot of those, and that tells us that we're placing the books correctly, because if a foreign publisher wants to renew again, it's only because it's sold very, very well and they want to continue. And so then it's a benefit to all parties to continue.
And sometimes the advance hasn't quite earned out, but they see the book's potential. It's still a strong seller, even if it's not flying off the shelves, and they renew as well for a small advance. So it just keeps the book alive in different ways, which is great.
Oh, we keep talking so much about making money. Like, I'm like, okay, let's do this. Like, I just want to, like, yeah, all right, sign me up. Okay, you might have already answered this, but do you all start promoting the process as soon as the publisher signs up? Is there a seasonal window? I believe you said you start right when they sign up, right?
Right when their metadata is in our system. So not when they sign up with IBPA. There's a checklist
Mhm.
They sign up, they pay, and then they start providing. Then they'll be contacted by us, by Aaron, and get it's called onboarded. They'll get onboarded, and depending on how tech savvy the person is to, fill out the spreadsheet, it can be one day or it can take them a little bit more time. But as soon as it's ready, it goes in live, like I said, and then Sherlock helps us sell right away. As far as seasonality, yes, there is. For adult titles, it's the Frankfurt Book Fair in the fall in October and London Book Fair in the spring in April. And for children's books, it's March in Bologna. Those are kind of like the big times.
Yeah.
But they buy all year round. I mean, really, that's just kind of the big time to promote them.
Mhm.
But our editors are working, except for Christmas, a couple of weeks over Christmas, and Europeans in August, they're not buying too much.
Yeah, we'll get the automated emails. We'll be back in September.
Yeah.
But when somebody's at the beach, there's always somebody else working away. So there's never a quiet moment really in publishing.
And in terms of payments for the royalties and all that, so someone's asking when the deal is signed, when does like the advance paid, like is that, I guess, per contract, or how's the payment?
Yeah, well, it's pretty standard. It's 60 days. So they have about 60 days to pay the advance. Some are better than others at getting it in those 60 days, but usually within 90 for sure. And then we pay. So we collect all that. We do all the accounting for it. And then we pay out the author or the publisher the following month by the 15th of the following month.
And in publishing in general, if somebody's or company's renowned as being a bad payer and they just never pay, then that reputation becomes
they
going to tarnish their reputation, and we won't really work with them again. So we make sure that our publishers pay as on time as possible.
Or else.
Look at
I don't want to know what the or else is. Okay, a few more questions. I know we're running over time. People were asking if you have any relationships with Africa specifically, or like internationally. I'm assuming you just do anywhere, but they specifically were wondering about Africa as the continent.
There are some African publishers. A lot of them tend to buy in export, so buy English language, because it might be a little costly for them to publish in their own language. And as Allison mentioned earlier, we work with a French African government. I think they're based in Kenya, and they buy some of our titles as well. If it's a charity, we usually, they can only budget for so much, and we honor that, and our publisher clients are happy to oblige as well, because the global south still has, it's not always the same type of budgets as we have in the Western world.
And there are flat fee deals too. I think that's what we do with the French
yes, that's correct.
So they pay, for example, $500 to print 1,000 titles or something like that, or whatever the ratio.
1,000 copies,
1,000 copies. And then if they want to print again, they have to come back. Then the contract stipulates that they would have to pay another flat fee to print again. So sometimes we do it that way if it's a really tiny market.
And some people were asking about, like, let's say their book is like set in like a place like Germany or Japan, or like a very specific country. Would they just target that country, or would it behoove them to just open it up in general, and it'd be fine just to see who would buy it?
Open it up, exactly.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
If the person or the publisher doesn't have rights sold somewhere in the world, it's a better idea, I think, to give us the opportunity to sell it anywhere for them on their behalf, because you just never know. Lots of books set in Germany are sold in China.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And then one last question. Someone's asking about memoirs. How do those do, or is that a like something that could sell overseas? Because you talk a lot about like things that are US centric. So I don't know if that falls into that category.
I think it's, again, if somebody has a fascinating story, if the person just asking that question was Michelle Obama, then yes, that will sell.
It was. She's on here, so great.
Wow. Well, hello, Mrs.
Michelle.
Obama. Actually, I'm just reading her new book. But yes, it's memoir is akin to fiction, I would say, and it has to be just a really, really intriguing, fascinating story. I mean, every human being has an interesting story, but something that will have wider appeal has to have some intrigue and something compelling, or a publisher would just buy memoirs written by people in their own countries.
Great. And you said children's books do well too, children's chapter books, right?
Exceedingly. Yes.
Yeah, very well.
Awesome.
And people have to pay attention to beautiful illustrations if it's an illustrated children's book as well. And you don't have to worry too much about, I mean, we sometimes say, oh, this looks too American. But equally, I think just beautiful illustrations will travel, just like a home. If it's beautifully decorated, it doesn't matter if it has a Scandinavian vibe or a North American one. So.
Sure. This is, I mean, I thank you so much. This is very interesting. People are saying that they really enjoyed it. So I'm very appreciative that you all have opened this up to IBPA members. It's one of those things that a lot of publishers want to get into, but it can feel daunting. So you all help make it feel, like more comfortable. So thank you for allowing our members to do something like this. It makes it a little easier.
Oh, and well, we really appreciate all the enthusiastic questions as well. That's a great sign, and we've loved presenting to your members and non-members as well.
Yeah,
we get so excited about finding a book a home internationally. We get so excited. That's what jazzes us up every day. So
yeah,
we're thrilled to entertain other new voices and new authors to our platform to help them find a home internationally too.
Thank you.
And to be in one of these cities where these book fairs are, Allison and I both do this. We browse a bookstore whenever we're there. So if you see a book that we've represented on the shelves in Germany, there's nothing more exciting than that as well.
Sure, of course, yeah. Well, thank you. So I'll just stop recording, but we're not all going to disappear. But everyone watching this, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. And we hope you'll check out the DropCap member benefit.
Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you.